Facilitators, body workers, and coaches often find that increasing their effort leads directly to a spike in client pushback. When we track the interaction between a practitioner and a dynamic human system, we see a specific mechanical friction. The more force applied to create change, the more the system stabilizes itself against that force. This high-friction collision occurs when a practitioner's agenda meets a system's natural protective state. As the practitioner applies pressure to drive a specific result, the system builds a denser wall of resistance to protect its baseline. The results of this collision are predictable. Trust in the process erodes, systemic pushback increases, and the practitioner exhausts their physical and mental reserves. They are fighting the exact system they are trying to assist. When a session feels effortful rather than effective, it is rarely due to a lack of technique. Almost universally, it is caused by the over-application of it. To bypass this friction, practitioners must replace the linear model of planned interventions with a continuous, real-time feedback loop. This simulation demonstrates the mechanics of minimal intervention. Rather than forcing a new, contradictory motion into the system, the practitioner merges with an existing momentum. You locate the direction the system is already moving, and you gently guide it. Operating within this fluid dynamic requires a specific methodological choice. If the system's direction is unclear, the practitioner does less. Stripping away excess technique forces a practitioner to observe reality. It turns abstract concepts like presence into a rigorous, measurable tool. The practitioner's body is a continuous baseline input into the room. Even before applying a visible technique, your own physiology is actively shaping the dynamic human system in front of you. This is the influence layer. Your breathing rate and muscular tension broadcast outward. The environment reacts. A stable, grounded state emits calm, synchronous ripples, telling the system to settle. Conversely, a reactive, triggered state creates choppy interference patterns that cause it to tighten. Detecting this internal reactivity requires an immediate mechanical protocol. Stop all external work, withdraw your input, and reset internally. Because your internal stability directly engineers the system's stability, maintaining self-regulation functions as a primary operational duty. Traditional assessment requires making a guess about a client's needs and committing to a sequence of actions. We replace that guesswork with continuous, high-fidelity tracking. The core loop is a closed circuit designed to prevent any action based on assumption. Observe, feel, check, and observe again. In the observe and feel nodes, you track somatic data, breath and rhythm, registering it internally. Then, at the check node, you pass a binary gate. Is your impulse to act driven by objective data or your own discomfort with stillness? If objective data requires intervention, you move to the act node. Here, the practitioner executes exactly one clear minimal input, never a pre-planned sequence or a multi-step protocol. You provide the input, then return immediately to observation. Running this continuous loop locks you into the present. It ensures the system's actual intelligence dictates the pace of change, rather than a pre-constructed plan. Even an accurate intervention will generate systemic resistance if the timing is off. In dynamic systems, timing outranks force. This sine wave maps signal windows. Input lands without friction during the breath pause at the peak, and movement starting on the upswing. These open moments welcome input. Conversely, during breath deepening and movement stopping, the system is integrating. You must strictly withhold all input. Restricting interventions to these open windows allows a practitioner to multiply their effectiveness while using significantly less physical effort. Beyond timing, we must scale the magnitude of input. Every intervention should utilize the absolute minimum force required to prompt a response. This hierarchy is the touch ladder. It scales intervention intensity from proximity and still contact up through directional touch, containment, and finally rhythmic input. Proximity and still contact provide pure information and a sense of safety without directing the system. These lower levels serve as the operational default for the majority of a session. High-magnitude inputs like rhythmic entrainment are at the top of the ladder. Relying on these to force a response is a mechanical symptom of overworking and missing the subtle cues available at lower levels. The structural rule is to start at the bottom. You escalate upward only when real-time data proves a lighter input has failed to register. Resistance is high-fidelity intelligence. Rather than viewing it as a failure metric, we see it as the system detailing exactly what it is trying to protect. This protection manifests physically as muscular bracing, energetic withdrawal, verbal deflection, or sudden structural collapse. The middle line is the edge, the point where the system is challenged but not overwhelmed. It's the only place change is possible. The mechanics are binary. Staying below yields no change. Pushing past it shatters the system's regulation, causing defensive mobilization or dissociation. A master practitioner locates the edge, holds steady at the boundary, and allows the system to expand on its own terms. Transformation happens when the system is challenged without being overwhelmed. Sustaining this level of observation demands immense capacity. Practitioner recovery protocols like clearing residue and returning to baseline serve as strict operational requirements to prevent the influence layer from becoming toxic. This data matrix maps precision sound modulation, a toolkit for maintaining the environmental container through acoustic frequencies. Specific tools, such as theta range binaural beats for deepening or 128 Hz tuning forks for grounding, can induce alert engagement or profound settling. The system absorbs these frequencies without triggering the physical resistance often sparked by touch. By combining internal energy management with external acoustic architecture, practitioners can guide complex dynamics without ever laying a hand on the system. Transitioning from technique-dependent practice to presence-based facilitation requires the practitioner to abandon the performance of leadership for the discipline of observation. Treating dynamic systems as inert matter to be molded by a specific protocol leads to friction. You work harder, the client resists more, and the resulting burnout is inevitable. When you operationalize your presence and ruthlessly minimize your inputs, the mechanics change. You step out of the way, and the system's own inherent intelligence executes the heavy lifting.